Now, next up, we have Lee Thompson, who's the Strategy Director at AudioOne for our next session, where he'll share the latest research from IAB Ireland's Audio Council on digital audio consumption and behaviour. So over to you. He's just been transported through the Zoomiverse. There he is. Hi, Lee. I think you're on mute.
Hi, Ryan. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lee Thompson. I'm the Strategy Director at AudioOne, Ireland's largest digital audio marketplace. First off, I'd like to thank IAB Ireland for asking me to represent its Audio Council, and also to congratulate IAB Europe for organising a really exciting and helpful virtual event. By way of setting the scene, I think it's important to let you know that Ireland is indeed an audio-loving country. And in fact, the backstory to digital audio's strong growth and momentum in a few years derives from both our love of music, our love of radio, but also our fondness for a good story well told. And in fact, with 81% of adults listening each weekday to radio, we have here in this country one of the highest daily radio listening rates in the world. So conscious of this and also aware that something exciting was happening in the digital audio space, IAB Ireland launched its Audio Council in 2018. In early 2019, IAB Ireland, supported by its membership, acted quickly and decisively and decided to invest in research aimed at helping size and profile the audience listening to digital audio in Ireland. It commissioned a local company, Red Sea, to carry out research into the digital audio usage and behaviours of the Irish population. These surveys have been conducted online with a representative sample of over 1,000 adults every year since. And the latest instalment and third wave of the research was conducted in early June this year. And over the following slides, I will be presenting the key findings. One important footnote to the research is when it was carried out in relation to the COVID restrictions that were in place at that time. This particular wave, as I've said, was carried out in June 2021, meaning that a lot of the restrictions had been lifted. So we'd regained our liberties to a very large extent. Whereas the last time that research was carried out in September 2020, at that time, Ireland was in lockdown level 2, operating under far more severe restrictions. So I guess the results from this wave need to be appraised in that light. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll just dive into the research findings. Okay, so the first slide relates to reach, and what you can see here is that 71% of Irish adults listen to digital audio at least once each week. This equates to 2.53 million people. This figure might be familiar to some of the Irish listeners on the call, as it doesn't show any growth from the last wave, which ran in September 2020. But because of increased mobility in the population, this is not very surprising.
Lee, sorry, just to interject, we can't see the slides that you're presenting in a minute.
You can't see the slides?
No. Have you shared the screen on the Zoom?
Let me see. Hold on one sec.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Here we go. Perfect.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Ryan.
No problem.
Okay, so as I was saying, 71% of Irish adults listen to digital audio at least once each week. This equates to over 2.5 million adults. And this figure might be familiar to some of the Irish listeners on the call, as it shows no growth on the last wave, which ran in September 2020. But because of the increased mobility in the population, this is not really surprising. And if anything, in my view, it confirms, if you like, that the behaviours learned and the habits formed during lockdown in 2020, when we saw the first real surge in digital audio listenership, have been sustained. Incremental reach is a very important concept as it relates to the percentage of audience consuming digital audio who are not reachable by FM radio. And here we can see that 15% of digital audio listeners do not listen to FM radio. And this is up from 7% in 2020, and shows how digital audio can be relied upon to add more and more cover to FM radio campaigns when planned alongside. But of course, it can also deliver scaled audiences on its own. This slide talks about incremental reach by age group and channel. And what you can see is that the gain in net reach is most noticeable amongst the 18 to 34-year-old age cohort. And if you look next at incremental reach by channel, you will see that the gain in net reach is most noticeable for on-demand music and podcast listening. So what do digital audio users listen to on a weekly basis? You can see clearly here that the most popular type of digital audio content is on-demand music. So think Spotify, think Google Play, think SoundCloud. And on-demand music really has been, since the start, the engine driving digital audio consumption in Ireland. Next comes live radio listening, followed by podcast. And since the last wave, we've seen some gains for on-demand music and podcast, whereas combined radio, which includes live radio, catch-up radio, and radio aggregator services, have remained largely static. Podcasts have recorded the biggest wave-on-wave percentage increase in consumption. So what is the frequency of digital audio listening by content type? So this slide shows the proportions of people listening to digital audio over different time frames. So on the left, you can see daily, in the middle weekly, and on the right monthly. So 33% of digital audio listeners are listening daily. This equates to a figure of almost 1 million adults, of whom close to 250,000 are listening to on-demand music and fractionally less are listening to combined radio. And from a monthly perspective, 2.7 million, or over 3/4 of the Irish adult population, is listening to digital audio at least once monthly. When we look at average weekly consumption, we can see that this has actually fallen in the most recent wave from the position in September 2020. Although, as we've already mentioned, reach has remained steady. We discussed earlier, and I believe that this is certainly related to the opening up of the economy, and the consumption figures of 15.3 hours, which represents a 7% slippage on the last wave, still represents a significant gain from the 2019 position. Clear that men and younger age groups over-index here. So we can see higher consumptions among 18 to 34-year-olds, and this is particularly the case for 25 to 34-year-olds who are spending 20 hours per week with the medium. And males appear to devote more of their time than females to digital audio. There's a lot going on in this slide, but the key point is to look closely at how listeners differ depending on the type of content that's being listened to. And it might just help for simplicity just to look at the bars that are ringed. So by looking at age first, we can see here that young people, so 18 to 34-year-olds, spend by far the most time with on-demand music. Live radio appears to attract most time from 55 to 64-year-olds, whereas podcasts attract most time from 25 to 34-year-olds. By looking at social class, we can see that on-demand music seems to attract a lot more time from ABC ones than any other social class groupings. And finally, by looking at gender, we can see that the time spent listening to both live radio and on-demand music is largely similar. Okay, so let's turn now to digital audio behavior. Unsurprisingly, we can see here that the smartphone continues to be the primary consumption device used to listen to digital audio. Car consumption comes in joint second at 28%, with smart speakers regularly used in 25% of cases. Consumption via smart speaker as the most used device has actually grown by 50% in the space of 9 months. And I think that's very noteworthy. And to delve a little bit deeper into the smart speaker world, if you like, we can see here that over 1/3, so 35% of Irish households now have a smart speaker. This is up 25% from the position in September 2020 and underlines the fact that smart speakers in a short period of time have become firmly established as mainstream access devices in the home. And 14% of those households that do not currently have a smart speaker intend to buy one over the next year. Okay, so what are the top activities people are engaged with when listening to digital audio? These activities have been largely unchanged over the course of the last 3 waves of this research. And interestingly, you can see parallels with the primary environments for radio consumption. So at home, in car. But because digital audio is portable, we can also see strong consumption levels where people are out and about, exercising, socializing, commuting, working, and studying. What are the top content verticals accessed? Well, obviously, the type of content consumed is influenced by the relative popularity of the digital audio content being consumed. So it's no surprise that music on the far left is number 1 because of the predominance of on-demand music listening, but also music radio. This is followed by news and politics, and then you have sport. Then you start to see some of the stronger podcast verticals shining through, such as comedy and entertainment, society and culture, lifestyle and health. So with an eye to the future, we wanted to ask people about their past consumption history, but also their intentions around consumption going forward. And you can see here again, starting on the left, 44% agree that they're listening to more digital audio now than they were a year ago, with 30% saying they intend to listen more to digital audio over the next year. And this represents a 30% lift for the same question asked 9 months ago. The rise on the right in podcast consumption is even more marked, okay, with 60% saying they now listen to more podcast content than they did a year ago, and almost a third confirming that they will be increasing their podcast consumption over the next year. As a relatively newly formed habit, we wanted to find out where media time for digital audio consumption was coming from. And so we asked which media were being consumed less as a result of people consuming digital audio. And we discovered that time with traditional FM radio was more likely to be traded for digital audio time, and that's a 35% figure. This was followed by TV and online video, and even 20% of survey respondents said that they were spending less time on social media as a result of their time investment in digital audio. Okay, so on this slide, what we did is we presented qualitative statements to the survey respondents, the goal being to see how strongly they agreed with these statements. And as you can see, nearly half of the respondents agreed that they've discovered new content as a result of their digital audio listening. I think that's a very powerful result, as it confirms that there's this kind of discovery mindset, frontier spirit, if you like, associated with digital audio content consumption. And I think that presents a great insight for brands as they look to connect, I suppose, more intimately with digital audio listeners. Also, on the right-hand side, 39% of survey respondents said that they were happy to listen to ads in return for great free content. This represents a 50% lift, again on the same question asked 9 months ago, which I guess is good news for all of us because it reflects an increased openness and acceptance of the importance of advertising, or the role of advertising in funding great free content. So really, we're coming to the end now, and I guess the key summary points for me from this wave of research. First of all, I think the wave presents a very strong set of results. The large gains in listenership we saw in the last wave have been consolidated over the intervening 9 months. That this has happened precisely at the same time as COVID restrictions have been fully lifted, I think reveals that digital audio has become an important component part of our media day, whether that's locked indoors or outside, free to roam. The numbers are impressive. 2.5 million people are accessing digital audio weekly, with almost 1 million accessing daily. And critically, the net unduplicated reach versus FM radio has doubled to 15%, proving that this medium now delivers meaningful levels of additional cover, especially in the areas of on-demand music and podcast. So look, that's it from me. Thank you for your time. I hope you found the results interesting, and I'd encourage any of the local IAB country chapters who are keen to develop their own currency or a benchmark for digital audio to reach out to us here in Ireland, as our approach, I believe, has definitely helped build confidence among the agency and client community here in digital audio.
Thanks very much. Really appreciate that. And certainly provides some food for thought when it comes to digital audio trends in the audience. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more in this space. So thank you again for that.